Senators O'Loughlin,
Here.
Luetkemeyer, Bean, Beck, Bratton, Brown, Berger, Moon, Mosley, Roberts, Williams.
Thank you. We have a quorum. Today we have two nominees. I'll announce the nominee and the sponsoring senator who will join them for a picture right up front here. If your family is here, which I would say they're not, is here today, but if they were, they're welcome to join in the picture. When you're done presenting, then you go over and sign a document that we need, the senator does. And our first nominee is Mike Matousek, sponsored by Senator Luetkemeyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Tony Luetkemeyer, representing the 34th Senatorial District, here today to present Michael Matousek for his nomination to the State Board of Education. Mr. Matousek graduated from the University of Florida with a bachelor's degree in political science. He currently is the director of the Government Freight Conference for the American Trucking Association. He has, in addition to that, over 8 years of experience working in the U.S. House of Representatives, I believe for a period of time for Congressman Graves. And he, until very recently, served as an elected school board member for the Platte County R3 School District in my Senate district. Mr. Matousek would be a great addition to the State Board of Education, and I'm honored to support his nomination. And with that, we would be happy to take any questions from the committee.
All right, thank you. Any questions from anyone on the committee? Senator Moon?
Good morning, Mr. Matousek.
Good morning.
We had didn't know exactly we had this arranged yesterday, but I remember I think we first met by phone, maybe email. Was it 4 or 5, maybe 6 years ago?
2018-ish, 2019.
Okay. Yeah, so
yeah.
Longer than that. In any case, I appreciate the work you did in helping us with an issue years ago. And then I learned something yesterday, maybe the day before, I can't remember now when we spoke. However, your part on the school board currently had kind of a unique situation that you told me about, and I'd like for you to tell the members here on the committee and maybe others who might be interested about the young girl who brought the petition in. Tell us about that, if you will.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Really one of the neatest experiences I had on the local school board. And this is a process, really a process issue. But we had a second grader from one of our elementary schools. She collected over 400 signatures from other students. She, added or came and addressed the school board at a meeting, and what she was asking for was a swing set for Compass Elementary School. Really the coolest, sweetest presentation that the board has probably received in a long time. And at the end of it, I remember, I kind of looked at the board and I said, okay, what do we do now, right? I mean, we've had someone petition us for something, and we owe her a response. So the next school board meeting, I added a budget amendment to the agenda. Basically, the question was, do we give Compass Elementary a swing set, right? And so we ended up doing that. The board voted 4-2 to approve a swing set for the elementary school, and I think the point I really want to make is, before I ran for the school board, there was a lot of parents that in years prior would address the board or ask for something that really went unanswered, right? And so even though this was a second grader, she petitioned the board, went through the process, and we owed her an answer, right? And that was really why we put it on the agenda. And there are other examples that I've been a part of too, with parents and former students petitioning the board. And we don't always give them something. I had a former student that asked for some changes to our math program, and the next month I added an agenda that the board take no action, right? But at least the board gave that student a response. So,
well, I was glad to hear that, and it sounds to me like from our past experience, we were going up against some pretty heavy hitters, And it showed me, and learning more about you this week, that you're not afraid to take those issues on and at least ask the questions and let them be deliberated and maybe come to either the same conclusion or maybe something different. So I'm grateful to hear that, and I look forward to hearing your name quite a bit in the future.
Hopefully for good reasons. So.
Anyone else have a question? I have a question. I served on a school board till I got voted out. So they didn't appreciate, I guess, all my ideas. But what do you think is the biggest challenge that our public schools have?
Well, there's a couple. In our district, and I was on the school board of a suburban district, right? So our challenges are probably a little bit different than a rural district or an urban district. What I can tell you over the last few years that I've seen, attendance has been an issue. One of the things I've been following, it's new, that I think has been a challenge, is AMI days or virtual learning days. I think, to some extent, accountability. That said, or the lack thereof, our superintendent in the Platte County School District has done a great job holding our district staff accountable if they're not performing. So, I think there's a lot of time spent at school that is not necessarily spent doing classroom type work. Which is something I've seen. I have a fourth grader in public school, and there are a lot of things that just aren't really not necessarily related to the classroom. So, but again, attendance is a big thing. I think we have some great teachers, some great administrators. So that's my answer.
So the current commissioner is a friend of mine, and one of the things that I like about her is she talks about results. And I think, I'm getting to a question. It seems like we have allowed so many things into school, and I think maybe some of those at the federal kind of level then came down on us, and we push it into the school. Kind of like what you're saying, we have gotten away from the basics, and I don't know how we can function well and have 100 different things you have to get done in the day. So why are we not concentrating more on reading and math? And maybe that seems old-fashioned, but do you agree with that?
Absolutely. That was when I ran for the school board, right? Kind of back to the basics was part of my message, focusing more on reading and writing and math and science. And I think our district does a pretty good job at that, but it can be better, right? And certainly I'll be curious to see what the scores, the test scores are like in the fall when they're released. I've seen, my own son struggle with a few things recently that he normally hasn't, and I think there are probably several reasons for that, but, generally just not enough focus on the basic stuff in school. There's a lot of behavioral stuff that goes on, and that's important, right? You have to, if you have kids that are disrupting the classroom, it makes it difficult for everyone to learn. It makes it difficult for teachers to teach. So you have to address that stuff. But I think there's a balance, right, where if you spend too much time doing that, you're spending less time on math, on reading, and some of those core activities. So I don't know if our district strikes the right balance or if other districts do it, but something that should be looked at for sure.
All right, thank you. Senator Berger?
I just kind of wonder what your thoughts are about open enrollment. Just if you could speak to that, please.
Yeah, I support open enrollment. That said, there are pieces. Open enrollment is a very broad term, right? And there are different versions of it, both in the legislature here, right, with competing bills, competing requirements. From a school district's perspective, I can tell you some of the details would be a little bit concerning, right? If a sending district had to provide transportation, that would be very difficult for a school district to do, right? Very expensive. So the idea of open enrollment I support. Some of the specifics, right? That being one of those would be very challenging for a local school district to provide, transportation, right? If we had students at the Platte County R3 school district that wanted to go to Smithville or North Kansas City or, other what I'll call local school districts, if Platte County had to provide that transportation, that would be very difficult to do, if not impossible in some cases. So, but I do support open enrollment. Essentially getting rid of the, boundaries, and wouldn't be for everybody, right? I think it would. I would be curious to see the impact of it, but for a suburban district like ours, probably very little. I know there would be caps built into the number of students that could transfer. The debate in Jefferson City, right, is it mandatory for a school district to participate, or is it an opt-in type of thing? So, but generally I support open enrollment.
Senator Mosley?
So, since you are aware there are challenges in urban districts, what are your plans to deal with those challenges?
The first is to actually get into those schools, right? Work with those communities to go visit them and figure out what their challenges are. I can tell you what the challenges are at a district like Platte County, but again, I couldn't tell you what school is like in downtown Kansas City or St. Louis or Springfield or any of the other sort of more urban districts. So that would be part of my role, and one of my goals would be to get into those schools and talk with people and see what their challenges are, right? What do they need the State Board of Education and DESE to focus on? What's most important to those districts, right? Because those answers are probably different than they are in Platte County or than they would be in a rural district up north.
So, are you willing to also speak with the senators over those areas to get our perspective and, like when it comes to appointing for certain school boards, getting our feedback on who should be appointed?
Absolutely. In fact, when I went around yesterday to meet with folks, I left my name and number with every office that I went into. I think that's...
I didn't get to meet you.
I'm sorry?
I didn't get to meet you.
Yeah, no, we didn't get to meet, but no, I'm very accessible, would love the opportunity to, meet other senators that are interested in public education and get into those districts and into those schools and figure out what the issues are.
Mm-hmm. So it seems like a lot of times when it comes to urban areas, a lot of people, including people on the state board, think putting a Band-Aid on it as far as putting a charter school in the area or open enrollment is the key instead of funding these schools. So what is your thoughts on that?
Well, with charter schools, I'm not an expert on charter schools. I know those schools have expanded in years, not only in Missouri but across the country. Enrollment has grown. As far as funding, I don't know exactly what funding levers the State Board of Education has. I think my role as a member of the State Board of Education is to make sure that whatever the legislature does is implemented as intended, right? That if the legislature is appropriating money for specific uses in districts across the state, that money is allocated in a timely manner and used in the way it should be used. So oversight and accountability, would be the should be a focus of the state board and would be a focus of mine.
Mm-hmm. Speaking to those that teach or counselors in well-to-do areas in the school districts, I always ask them, what's the difference between your school, like in Ladue or Clayton, versus a school in the urban areas? Why are they doing better than the other schools? And it's always because the parents have more money to do for their kids. They're able to provide them tutors. They're also having their kids in therapy, things that people in urban areas can't afford. So even you putting a charter school in that area is not going to fix the issue, or you open enrollment, sending them somewhere else is not going to fix the issue of you still not having a tutor at home or therapy that you need. And being a senator over those areas, I know what type of things go on in those areas, and they do need some therapy and some help sometimes getting to school as well. And for you to put a charter school or open enrollment and having that school already struggling financially, and when the student has to leave because you got to open enrollment, send them somewhere else, that funding leaves with them. So now the school's losing more money. So what do you plan to do other than have a Band-Aid of just throwing out another option?
Well, you know, I'll say over the last 3 years on my local school board, kind of to the first part, you know, our district does have positions and staff that a lot of other districts probably don't have, right? And I can't think of all the titles and things right now, but we do have a lot of support and resources for students, right? All students, students that are struggling, students that just want extra help, programs for students that are doing really well, and even one of the examples I use, you know, this year is our first year as a district. We have an alternative school and a long-term suspension school. So it's basically students that are not on track to graduate or that are otherwise, you know, a disruption and you know, sort of that regular classroom model doesn't work for them. And students that have been suspended long-term for any number of reasons, right? Those students now have a building to go to on our campus. So they're not at home, they're not, you know, somewhere else learning virtually. They're there on campus learning, and that's something that I think has been great. The data that we have so far, I call it a pilot program, right, because this is the first year, but it's working, right? There are students that weren't on track to graduate that now are on track to graduate. Some, you know, students with behavioral issues that are sort of finding their way and you know, not as big as a disruption. Maybe that's not the best word, right? That they, you know, were in sort of the regular classroom setting. You know, as far as open enrollment, again, you know, the State Board of Education can't do that on its own. We can't, you know, that takes a change in state law. I would certainly give my opinion, right, on things like open enrollment, what I think would work and what would be challenging for a district. And I agree, right? I mean, just like, you know, the impact of open enrollment might be greater in an urban area than it is up in, you know, say the Platte County R3 school district, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't know exactly what those impacts would be, but something I would learn more about for sure.
Mm-hmm. And I know at one time when some students were being sent to a different area because of losing accreditation, soon as they were able to, the schools that they were going to sent them right back because they didn't want them there. But in regard to, say, a school loses their accreditation and you have to appoint a member to the appointed board or whatever, what would be an ideal appointee to a school board?
Yeah, that's a great question. I really don't have a good answer for that. I'm not even certain how often school districts lose accreditation. I don't know if that's you know, how often that happens. So I don't know. I think to me, what a school board member, you know, a school board member's role. You know, I was on my local school board for 3 years. I added things to the agenda, right? I moved to amend policy recommendations that were being sent to us from MSBA. You know, I added things, my own ideas, right? I disagreed with the superintendent, right? Not on everything, but on some things. What I saw with other board members was not being active, never adding anything to the agenda, never moving to amend anything, never disagreeing with the superintendent, right? Going along to get along, and that to me is not an ideal school board member, right? I sort of, you know, you can have tough conversations, you can talk about difficult issues, you can do it professionally and sort of leave it in the room, right? And then the next meeting you kind of move on. So that's what I would look for in a school board member, right? Is someone that's active, that puts in the effort. that occasionally disagrees with the superintendent and other board members on issues, and that's what I would look for.
What about as far as education background?
As far as what
Educational background?
what's mine,
No, for a school board member.
like should
If
they
you're
have
doing appointed school board member, would you want them to have an educational background?
That's a good question. I'm not an expert in public education. I have a fourth grader, and then I have a 4-year-old that will be in school starting in 2026. I went to public school, graduated from high school in 2001, graduated from a University of Florida in 2005 or 2006. But I don't have a background in public education. Does that mean I'm not as an effective board member as someone that has that background? Maybe, but I think it comes down to
When I say education, did the person have an educational background, like went to college, know something about being in education? Like, if you had to choose between someone that's just a member of a resident in the area versus a resident who has worked in the school district and has a degree in education, doctorate in education, which one would you choose between the two to be on the school board?
To be on a local school board, initially I would turn to the person that has the education background. Having said that, we have someone on our local school board that does have an education background, worked in public education for a long time, and is about as not active, right? Doesn't ask questions, never has ideas, and so I think it's effort. I think it's effort and sort of recognizing the role of what a school board member is supposed to do. So I wouldn't automatically say that someone who who's worked in public education should get that school board spot over someone that doesn't, because that would disqualify someone like me. But I think I think I've put the effort in.
You at least have education. You went to college. Yeah. Looks like.
Well, it was the University of Florida, not quite Mizzou, but we'll forgive it.
So if you had a member that got appointed and never showed up to a meeting, would you get rid of them off the board? If you appointed them and you saw that they weren't showing up?
Yeah, attendance is absolutely crucial at board meetings. I think I occasionally missed a meeting, but that was very rare, right? Sometimes there are work conflicts, and that will be the case on the State Board of Education if I'm confirmed. But attendance, not just showing up, but actually participating. Asking questions, adding things. When I got on the local school board, there was a lot I didn't know. So I was adding things to the agenda, right, just so I could learn, right? Mm-hmm. What's the board's authority? What do our board policies say, on various issues? So, it's more than just showing up, right? You have to ask questions. You have to take tough votes and sort of oversight and accountability, right? I mean, that's what it's about.
So how are you in regard to the support of teachers?
Well, I was talking with some others at DESE this morning, and I'm not, entirely familiar with what the State Board of Education's role is with providing direct support to DESE, but, my first question to the commissioner is, how can we help, right? How can the State Board of Education help you help our schools, right? And that includes teachers. So I don't have the answers for you right now, but the intent is there, and I think locally we've raised teacher pay, increased teacher pay all 3 years that I've been on the school board, right? And that doesn't necessarily, that just addresses a small piece of what what we need to do to help teachers, right, and make education a profession that people are getting into. Yeah. I would really look to DESE, right? Look to the Commissioner of Education, look to the legislature, and work with the governor's office. What do we need to do to help teachers? And I've seen locally, I think one of my concerns is our district pushes things down into the buildings, something new every year, right? Some new program, some new way of doing things, and teachers spend a lot of time dealing with that, trying to learn these new systems, right? Whether it's grading or whatever it is, right? It's a lot, right? Like I like my same email. I use an older version of Outlook and Excel, and I don't necessarily love new all the time, and so I think teachers do struggle with that, and that's a real issue.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Senator, could you continue that conversation offline, because we're going to lose our members. They're all trying to go to other committees too. Would you mind doing that?
I think I have the right to ask just as many questions as
Well,
anybody else, but I'll take it offline. You can come back to my office.
Yes.
I think that's kind of rude, but okay.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you for your willingness to serve. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much.
Oh. Okay. I lost Barb. Well, now we lost Barb. James got to leave. What? We now have our next nominee, John Otto, an independent, as a member of the State Board of Education. Uh-oh. Y'all are going to get your picture taken.
Do that now?
Yeah.
I thought we'd do it afterwards.
All right.
I want to see this in y'all house.
You can begin when you're ready.
Good morning, committee and Madam Chair, Madam President. Thank you for having us today. For the record, I'm Barbara Ann Washington, the Senator from Jackson County, District 9, and it's my pleasure today to present for your approval John Otto as a member of the State Board of Education. I have this little information, but I'm going to tell you the John Otto I know. He is a fellow attorney, which always makes that great. However, I have known John Otto since before he went to law school through his wife, who is a really good friend of mine. John has always been extremely dedicated to education, especially the K through 12. He has, they have 4 children. Their children have been in public, they've been in charter, they've even been in military school. And the Ottos are folks that are well connected and committed to bettering education in our community. John has served on the boards of a lot of places. But specifically with education, he's been with the Child Protection Center. He's been on Operation Breakthrough, which in our community is one of the largest pre-K and daycare programs in the entire state of Missouri. I see my fellow Kansas City area folks shaking their head. Operation Breakthrough gets enormous support. Travis Kelsey, the athlete, even built a computer center for them, and John was very instrumental in helping them with their fundraising efforts and with their expansion. He's also was on the founding board of one of the highest ranked charter schools in the state, and that is Academy Lafayette. He serves with Habitat for Humanity. He serves with our Youth Friends program as a tutor. And he also volunteered with our Niles Home, which is a kind of an orphanage. It's kind of like an orphanage place. Just to show his testament to education in K through 12, His children have all attended Lincoln Academy, which has been ranked the #1 school several times in the last 10 years, the #1 high school in the state. And we have his daughter, who is a senior at American University in D.C. on a full ride. So he understands what is necessary to get children through K through 12, what the barriers are, and what innovation can come across to help our children be successful. And I just want to point out they've done all of that, and they live east of Troost in Kansas City, and that for our Kansas City folks, they understand what that means.
Well, boy. You've done everything. Thank you for that, Senator. Do I have any questions? Senator Mosley?
Thank you for coming by my office yesterday. We had a long talk in the hallway with my sorority sisters as well as in my office. So I appreciate you coming by and being under the fire and being willing to do so. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Senator Williams?
Good morning.
Good morning.
For me, I'd love to get to know you after this. In the St. Louis region, I have about 11 public school districts, including Normandy as well as Riverview Gardens, so Clayton School District as well as Ladue. So some of the top performing schools as well as some of the more poverty-stricken ones. It really forces me to kind of think in a very unique scope when it comes to education, and I'd love to kind of get your thoughts. I've been really engaged with the State Board of Education as well as the Commissioner. It's an area I'm very passionate about, so just getting to know you and hopefully get you over to St. Louis and see some of the schools.
Yeah, no, looking forward to it.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Madam Chair.
I just want to add in here that this nominee has relatives in my home county, so
That's right.
that qualifies him. Any other comments or questions? Well, that was pretty easy. So anyway, thank you for being willing to
That's
serve.
what we do in the 9th District.
Yeah.
We bring you quality.
You get her done, don't you? Anyway,
you.
thank you for being willing to serve, and thank you for being here and going around and visiting with everybody, both of you. Thank you. This concludes our hearing, and I make a motion for us to enter executive session. I have a second. All those in favor say aye. All opposed? We're now in executive session. I move that we roll these two nominees into one slate. Do I have a second? Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We now have a slate before us. I move that we do pass the slate out of committee. Do I have a second? Second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing no discussion, Mr. Secretary, call the roll.
Senators O'Laughlin.
Aye.
Luetkemeyer. Bean. Beck. Bratton. Brown. Berger. Moon. Mosley. Roberts. Williams.
By a vote of 9-0, we do pass this slate, and I thank you. This concludes our hearing. I move that we adjourn. Do I have a second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We're now adjourned. Thank you.